Welcome. Drink Less, Feel Fresh listeners, viewers, family. Tommy Cartwright here, founder of Drink Less, Feel Fresh, accompanied with the very talented Nat Hodges. Nat, how are
Good, very good. Happy to be here. Had a great weekend camping, so I am relaxed. And Tommy, when I'm relaxed, I'm dangerous.
you? You're in the zone when you're relaxed. And if anyone's listening for the first time, whether you're watching this live or you're watching the YouTube series, or you're listening to this in your car whilst you're on a road trip, when Nat says he's dangerous, Nat is actually head of behavior change consultation and program design and facilitation at Drink Less, Feel Fresh. So that's what we mean when he's dangerous. So if you're looking to change your relationship with alcohol, now you all know you want to get Nat after a camping trip and when he's in the zen and he's in the zone.
Perfect.
Our private clients, Nat will be messaging me like, "Hey Tom, do you know if Nat's been camping this week? I was thinking about booking in a session on Monday." Oh, I love it. Nat, we're going to dive into a bit of a rabbit hole today, one that you probably know that I'm really passionate about. And it's about which battle are you choosing to have? And what that means is one of the biggest problems when it comes to changing your relationship with alcohol, viewers and listeners, is that you forget the fight that's worth having and you get stuck in a fight that, whilst it's not to discredit it, but if you get stuck fighting what we're about to mention to you, you're kind of just taken away from what matters most anyway. And so I'll tell you what I mean. A really good way to look at your alcohol reduction journey is asking yourself why you're doing it and why you're here. And one of the things that we see in Drink Less, Feel Fresh members before they come to us is that they've tried to tackle their relationship with alcohol for months or even years, and they feel like every day is a nail biter and that they're constantly fighting against the alcohol. So they're kind of like on the battlefield of rebelling against, fighting against, thinking about, telling themselves what to do, what not to do, pretty much every day, all day. Or if you're not that big of a drinker, it's every weekend or a few times a month. And the thing is to be aware of whilst that's a great cause, and Nat and I recommend that you go into battle, so to speak, and you start becoming aware and making decisions for yourself and doing the necessary tasks that are necessary to grow, you always want to be careful and understand and just ask yourself, from battling alcohol, am I also taking away from life? Am I forgetting what matters most? And what I mean when I say that, then I'm going to get you to jump in here and share a couple of things, Nat. What I mean when I say that is that your ability or your decision to change your relationship with alcohol should be nothing more than a stepping stone in regards to increasing the quality of your life. What does that look like for some people? Creating great relationships, having conversations that matter even though they're difficult, leaving a current workplace because you're not happy and venturing off to find out what you're passionate about, getting back into your health and fitness, looking after your nutrition. These are the things or the reasons why most of our members want to change their relationship with alcohol. And if you're stuck fighting alcohol on a daily or a weekly basis, are you also just avoiding life? And Nat and I don't know about you, Nat, like that, I get sad about that. I think it's really sad that someone could be focusing on all of the beautiful things that life has to offer, but instead they're stuck with a debilitating experience of alcohol. And again, it's not to discredit the importance, and sometimes it is a fight. I went through it years ago of like Friday night sitting there, literally biting my nails, eating chocolate. Like, what do I do? What do I do? I get that. But you got to remember, you always have to remember that there is a battle worth having. And that's what I like to call fighting for life, fighting for what you want a little bit more than fighting for what you don't want in life. Now, when I share that, like what goes on for you from your psychology, behavioral background, like how does that resonate or make sense or is valuable for someone to hear for the first time?
Yeah, I think there's stages to get to that point. So that experience of I'm in a battle right now is down the line. Normally, where someone is ready to make a decision to change, they're in that experience. They're in that experience of push and pull. Do I? Don't I? And then because you're in that battle so much, it's like life just drains away. That takes your entire focus. I think I want to start us a few steps back to look at, okay, what's the smoke signals that I'm on the way to that? Because that's like, if you can catch it, then it's like at prime time. But we'll go the journey. The first thing I try and tell everyone who's with us, Tommy, is the moment life starts to shoot, the moment you become indifferent to life, so life gets a little bit numb. It gets a bit bland and a bit numb because the alcohol has taken priority, whether you know it or not. Whether you know it or not, alcohol has taken priority. That makes the experience of life indifferent. You're indifferent to kind of how it all goes. from that position, it's really hard to actually know what you want because life has just gone flatland. Life has just gone flatland. You've become indifferent. That's the stage before we get to the, oh my God, I'm losing a bit of track here. Like this thing has me. Does that make sense?
Are you referring to what I think of there? Is it almost like once, let's just speak honestly. There's a buzz around alcohol when you turn 14, 15, 16, 18, a little bit earlier for some people, a little bit later for other people, but there's like a buzz to it. There's a hype. There's like, this is adding to my experience. Are you referring to like
Yes.
over time where that just dissipates to the extent of like,
Yep.
you don't even know why you're doing it?
Yep. Bingo. Your life has become indifferent. And then that's the only experience that gives you something. And then we habituate into that. It's just like we deal with life because we get to have a drink. And then we deal with life, and then we get to have a drink. That indifference is the start of when things can get really hard.
Sounds like the
And
beginning of the habit,
yeah.
which is the habit is the beginning of potentially being diagnosed or labeled an alcoholic down the track.
Yes, exactly. Now, if you leave that too long and you get to the position of the battle, then, well, I mean, it's just more work. The longer you leave it, the harder it is. And so, what are you saying? Go, Tommy.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there, and it's like I love what you said because we do hear a lot of members say that too. Like the longer I've left it, the harder it is. The thing to realize as well, listeners and viewers, is there is the time it took you to cause a problem doesn't need to be the time it takes you to let go of it. And I think that's something I learned in grief counseling and understanding grief and how to let go. And there is often a big misconception, that if it took me this long to create the problem, is it too late for me? And it's not. We've had
yes, good. That's very good.
Now, and that's just after anybody who's of an age who's of an age when it comes to their drinking with alcohol. So they're not 1 year in, they're not 5 years in, they're not 10 years in, they're like 25 plus years into their relationship with alcohol. Yeah. It's often something that we hear of like, well, I've been doing this for a long time. It's going to be harder than it was for me or you or Nat or some of the other younger members. Yeah. And I'll just give you an example and then we'll move on. I'm going to replace her name. Let's say her name's Sam. Nat, I didn't share this with you yet because it was over the weekend. Sam messaged me. Sam did a couple of our 30-day detox challenges in 2018, right? A couple of our 30-day detox challenges, spent about 6 months with us, and then said, I'm good to rock and roll. I was like, great, you go crush life. You come back if you ever need us. I haven't spoken to her in a couple of years. Sam just sent me a message on Facebook, a photo of her at her 50th birthday. And the message was along the lines of, can you believe it? 3 to 4 years later, still haven't had a drop of alcohol, but that's not what lights me up. What lights me up is I'm here celebrating my 50th birthday and I just don't need alcohol to have fun. And you know what I mean? Like that was such a beautiful experience. And Sam was similar to some of our members. Sam came in. Sam at the time would have been, I think it was about 47. And I do remember Sam having that conversation like, Tom, I've been drinking a long time. I started drinking when I was a teenager and drinking a long time. And how long is it going to take? And even I'm just smiling now thinking back to it like, well, you were drinking for 25 plus years. You spent 3 to 5 months detoxing and learning what it is that we teach here. Yeah. And you're good to rock and roll.
Yeah. Tommy, can I share something that's just kind of happened just then? But it's kind of like, it just makes so much sense. After working with so many clients with one goal in mind, changing your relationship with alcohol, I can't see, and you can please prove me wrong if you can. I can't see a way that I can't see a rule book and I can't see a method and I can't see a way it happens because everyone's so different. Like when Tommy talks about going into the battle, what I hear is you have to go into the battle, right? You have to go into the hard thing. But that doesn't mean you go into the hard thing and there's this crazy long journey. You go into the hard thing to set up a moment of a miracle. Seriously, like you go into the hard thing because sometimes it just goes bang and it clicks and you are through the other side where you can just keep up the work now. Like sometimes I see people and you see stages and steps and they're growing and they're loving it and it's a slow burn. Sometimes people enter the battle and they feel like they go nowhere and they're banging their head up against the wall and then pop and it all happens all at once. But I can't see a model of how this is supposed to work. There's only one thing you got to do: start the journey.
Yes. Yeah. Be yourself, which means start the journey.
Yeah.
Mate, no, 100% agree, mate. I don't think I've never experienced specializing in this industry for as long as I've never experienced
Like a model.
that
Yeah.
that worked. There's a model that worked for that group of people that in hindsight it worked for. That's it. That's all there is. There's no the model worked. It's the model helped someone start the journey.
Yes.
And like we've had people, I'll give you an example, perfect example, vulnerable example, right? Because most companies like, oh, we're the best. That's how we do things. I had a member in 2016 reach out for help. They started our 90-day detox challenge back then, Nat. And about 6 weeks in, said to me, you know what? This isn't for me. And I was like, no worries. Can you give me some feedback? What was working? What wasn't working? They said, oh, it's just not the level of support that I needed and that I wanted. Okay. I said, fair enough. I do apologize. So I assume that you must still be struggling with your alcohol intake. And would you like a couple of recommendations? And I had a list of some companies that I could have sent them to. And they said, well, no, actually, I'm doing really well. I haven't had a drink in 5 days. And I said, great. Oh, great. So what support service were you using? They said, oh, well, no, just yours. I went,
yeah.
Okay. And because I understand what you just said, Nat, that I just said, no worries. And I let that person go. Now I'm going to make the assumption that in their mind, our service didn't work for them, which is great, right? Whatever they want to, suggest works for them, works for them. Yep. But the fact that they got into the battlefield, that's the only place you can give yourself being in the battlefield gives you the potential opportunity. That's all it does. As you started this call, I love how you said it, Nat. It's like when you live in sameness, there's a problem. When you live in sameness and nothingness and like, well, I just need a drink at the end of the day, I don't know why. That is the killer of opportunity. Yeah. That's the killer of opportunity. But I do want to add, I think it's so important that when it comes to what does work and what doesn't work, one of the things that seems to really help people is remind themselves why they're here. You know what I mean? Like it's sad. I get a little bit sad about it when I see someone has, like, let's say a wife or a husband or a partner and children, or just children, like they have someone physically that they're responsible for, they want to be with. They have this level of connection. And every afternoon they're fighting to not have a drink, as opposed to fighting to be present, fighting to take the kids out, fighting to be there, fighting to spend time together. And that's what I mean. If there was ever a battle worth having, I think it's making sure that you're on the battlefield for creating and increasing the quality of your life. And I just think a lot of the time, due to traditional methods, we can often get stuck and we go, hang on a second, let's put a pause on life. Let's put a pause on my partner and my children and my business and everything. And let me just focus on kicking the alcohol, which has its space, its time for sure. It's very important. But I think that's so important to understand. Like, what am I battling every day? Am I battling to be here, to be present, to live with peace, to live with contentment, to forgive myself? Am I on the battlefield of, recovery and healing? As opposed to
honest assessment. Hey, like that's so helpful. Just to be extremely, extremely honest with yourself. I reckon this year, Tommy, in my consulting, is I've no more. This year's been the most where I've been helping people just establish the truth of where they stand right now, in terms of how much sensitivity they need to give themselves, how much care they need to give themselves, how much space they need to give themselves, how much time they need to give themselves. Like, teaching people literally now is the perfect time and the most necessary time where you've got to understand how to prioritize yourself in every way.
Mate, I'd probably resonate with that. I don't know if it's me personally and my clients, but I think we won't go into the rabbit hole into a different rabbit hole, which is what we're teaching the Evolve community about, the social and cultural pressures. But I think the way Australia as well, specifically if you're living in this country, or if you're listening from another first world country, I think we are living in a time where most of us are being so forced to realize what we actually need, because we're being force fed what we don't need. I think a lot of totally. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. I don't use this word lightly, Nat, but I think a lot of people are starting to realize how vulnerable we are. How much that just meaning like how much we need our time, we need our space, we need
We're sensitive creatures.
There we go. We are very sensitive. And I think, we'll leave that part there, mate. I just think that's We
I've got a
are.
bit of a rule of thumb, Tommy, for our clients. I've been using it a lot, basically with everyone. I'll just give it to you guys, which is rule of thumb: prioritize yourself first in every moment. What a crazy rule, right? Prioritize yourself first in every moment of what you need, and then negotiate on how you're going to get that and be there for others in whatever capacity that is. So the rule of thumb:
Just repeat that. Now
prioritize
that cut
yourself.
out a little bit.
The rule of thumb is prioritize yourself in every single way in every moment. And then over the top of that, negotiate how you're going to service yourself and show up for your responsibilities and others' needs. Negotiate, right? That deepens relationships. It looks after you. It challenges other people to step up in their way. It's a perfect little method. Prioritize yourself and then negotiate.
I'll for anybody that's listening, this will help what Nat just said land dramatically. The biggest misconception when someone has a high alcohol intake is, especially if they're affecting others, is that they're selfish, right? That's the biggest misconception. They're selfish people. Now, when you are over consuming alcohol to the extent that you don't like it, so it's dysfunctional, which means it's either not good for you, it's not good for others, and it's not good for the greater good. When you have a relationship with alcohol to that extent, you come across on the surface more of a narcissistic individual, which means self-obsessed. You don't care about other people. All you need is your alcohol intake. All you need is your drink. So you just choose a drink.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's actually a huge misconception.
That's what it looks like on the surface.
There we go. Yeah. Anybody and everybody, and you're a bit over 10 years now. I'm 9 years, so nearly combined 20 years. I think you'll just agree with what I'm about to say, Nat, but jump in if not. Every single person that has a reliance on a substance deep down does not understand how to put themselves first. That's all you need to know. If you have a reliance on a substance that you feel guilty or shameful for, it is a symptom of not knowing how to put yourself first. So you've sacrificed yourself to the extent that you're either drained, emotionally unavailable, you don't have the emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical presence and energy and ability to be there for anyone else. But you got to notice that's a symptom down the line of not knowing how to put yourself first and prioritize self. Nat and I have been doing this a long time. And Nat, would you agree that one of the greatest recipes for increasing the quality of your life is, as you just said, prioritize self first? And have you met anybody that prioritizes themselves dramatically, but still falls into traditional addiction norms like alcohol, drug dependency?
Never.
Me neither.
Never. Yeah. When Tommy said put yourself first, it's important to know that if, like, let's say you've got a male who's big energy, who puts his goals and his achievements first, that's still not putting himself first. That's putting his ideals first. That's putting his achievements first. That's still not putting himself first. So it's radical selfishness of the self, not your goals, and anything external is not the self. So it's self first.
Yeah, here's a great distinction, listeners. Here's the distinction. If you putting yourself first is really functional and healthy for you, the people that you love most, and the greater good, you're probably doing sorted. What Nat's talking about, right? You know what I mean? You're sorted. But if you're putting yourself first, and as Nat said, you got a high performing, high functioning, I've got to get to the gym. The family's like, no, we need you to help with the kids. No, I've got to get to the gym. It's important I get to the gym. I've got to make the money. Like,
I'm on a mission.
Nat and I are being sexist and judgmental at the moment, but that's okay.
Nah, bugger 'em.
If you're ever putting yourself first to the extent that someone else is suffering because of your need to put yourself first, you haven't learned how to put yourself first. That's a great way to put it. If you are ever putting yourself first to the level that it directly negatively influences the people you care about, you haven't put yourself first. That's so fitting as well, pending this conversation, Nat, which is we listen to how this conversation started before we wrap up. We started with, what's the battlefield that you want to be on? And we shared that whilst going into battle with alcohol is the step, it's just to give you permission and potential opportunity to create the life that you want. Now we're talking about it. Actually being in the battlefield, putting yourself first. I know so many people that, I've had clients that call me, it's a little bit later in the day. They call me, they go, I don't know what to do. I'm about to have a beverage. Tell me, what should I do? Do I drink? Do I not drink? And in those moments, I always say, I'm not going to answer that question for you. You can do it yourself. The only thing I suggest
you're not saving anyone, are you, lad? You are not saving anyone.
All I ever say to them, Nat, is I ask them, what if you put yourself first right now? What would you do?
Oh, what
And
a
I've
question.
heard of a very small percentage of my client go, to be honest, I'll just have a
Oh,
beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say, all right. And the 98% of clients, when I ask them, that's because I'm not going to bullshit people and say 100% of clients say this. No, the 98% of clients, when I say put yourself first, they often take a breath and go, Tommy, I just need a fucking walk, but I don't know if I can because my kids are inside waiting and I'm
Yeah,
meant to be there
yeah.
5 minutes ago. Or I had a client last
Yeah.
week go, to be honest, Tommy, it's midday here and I need to take the afternoon off. Like it's often just an awareness that we need something and we don't know that that's okay. So then we fall out of fighting for what we need and now we're stuck fighting in the alcohol triggers.
Yeah. There's a question there from Isabel, I think, pop up there, Tommy. Might be a nice way to wrap up.
Yeah, great question. I will answer this before we wrap up the call. For anybody listening live, please jump in. Let us know how this call has been, or if you have any other questions, and we'll answer them next week. Okay, so Isabel sharing, can you explain how to put yourself first without disrupting the family, without feeling guilty? Going to do my best.
That's the big question.
that is the question. I'm going to be really honest with you, Isabel, and anyone else that's listening. I don't have a magic pill for you, which means the question that you're asking actually requires you to trust the process and it's a retraining process. It's very individual. It's a retraining process. Like when you ask that question, Isabel, how do you put yourself first without disrupting the family? I have a highlights reel of about 15 to 36 moments where I wanted to put myself first and felt deeply guilty, but did and came out the other side and practiced it over and over. So whilst in another conversation where we might be talking about something different or one of our more intimate classes and we had a bit more time to unpack this personally for you, at the end of the day, don't wait to remove guilt before you put yourself first. And I will share this with you. There's a difference between there's two levels of guilt that you can feel or experience in my view of things: appropriate guilt and non-appropriate guilt. Okay, Isabel, appropriate guilt is when you are running a behavior pattern that if everybody on the planet did it, the world would collapse. Give an example. If you're driving through a red or a green light and it goes red and you go, oh, and you feel guilt, that's called appropriate guilt. And the reason why it's appropriate.
Keeps everything in order.
Keeps everything in order and everybody shouldn't do that, right? It's like, so it's appropriate. Like I was on the highway the other day and I was speeding a little bit. I'm sorry to say, I was speeding a little bit and I saw a cop car. I was like, oh, and I was like, oh my God, I was speeding a little bit. I felt really guilty. And I was like, God, and I'm like, that's appropriate, Tommy. That's trying to regulate and check yourself into a safety pattern. But there's also, Isabel, what's called non-appropriate guilt. Non-appropriate guilt is when you and I have been taught over years and years that non-appropriate guilt is when you put yourself first. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for the family. And it's going to be good for the greater good, greater good, but we feel guilt anyway. And this is the clearest way I can say it. That is non-appropriate guilt. And that does require you to train it. We've got to train it out of ourselves. And I tell you right now, I won't ask any more questions on this, Isabel. When you say, how do you put yourself first without disrupting the family? The only thing that's disrupting your family right now is that you're not putting yourself first. And I know that's really hard to hear.
It does work like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the only damage we ever do to our family ever is that we're not putting ourselves first. Then our family just get the second version of us, the part of us that's guilty, annoyed, frustrated, not happy with themselves. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that's resonating for you as well. It's a tough lesson to learn, especially if we're someone who's really thinking about others all the time. We feel like we're sacrificing ourselves too much. But if we can take that message on, the only thing we don't want to do for our family is put ourselves second. Everything opens up for you. Drink Less, Feel Fresh family. Trust you've absolutely loved this episode of the Fresh AF podcast, where we dove into what is the battle worth having.
Great to have you.
So wonderful to see you here, Ramina. I hope to see you every week, same time, same place. If you've registered for this one, you'll receive your crazy cats. You receive a reminder email every week. So looking forward to seeing you next week. Yeah, you're very welcome. Have an incredible week. Have an incredible day. Here's to drinking less and feeling fresh. Here's to gaining more awareness and education so that we can make new choices on a day-to-day basis, which therefore change our behavior patterns, which will lead us to more and more freedom. See you same time, same place next week. Thanks, Nat.
See you, team. No worries. See you guys.